Hello, welcome back to Oliver's greenhouse. Now, some of you, the more attentive of you may know, I'm in the process of bubble wrapping the inside of the greenhouse, which is without a shadow of a doubt my least favourite thing about owning a greenhouse, because you're constantly moving plants and cleaning fastidiously because you're just making a big putting more plastic into what is essentially a big plastic box which is nice and warm and moist, ready for winter. And so it involves, well, for me it certainly involves a lot of work, having kids and stuff, as well as sort of like just generally being around for my wife doesn't mean that I can commit a whole weekend to just sticking up plastic. Anyway, it's kind of going all right. I've done sort of half of it now, so we're almost ready for winter. It's not really got that cold yet. That big storm in Ireland's happened this weekend. It's sucked up a load of hot air from Spain, so it's unseasonably mild. It's like 20 degrees in the middle of October, so that's quite pleasant, I suppose, in a way. I was wandering around in the greenhouse the other day, undertaking my most favourite task of bubble wrapping, when I came across a job which I've been meaning to do. And there are certain signs about the orchids which I need to get on and do things now rather than later. And I've brought them in already, they're down here. So I get a lot of compliments about these orchids. So these are my hanger, these are two Bulbophyllums, Ambrosia, and this is Putidum, and they grow in my hanger pots, okay? And they grow really, really, really well, but they are well and truly overdue a good repotting. I think they've been in here for, well over a year, probably more like sort of 14, 15 months. So they could really do with a repot. They're still growing perfectly fine, but I'm pretty convinced that the media is broken down now to the point where actually we need to step in and do something before it becomes so sour that the plants start to suffer as a result of it. So you don't want plants in dank, horrible, sour mix, because they will let you know that they're not happy by becoming very ill very quickly, and it can harbour all sorts of viruses and rubbish basically. So it's not a good idea to leave things potted in the same media for too long. So I came across that and thought to myself, right, that needs doing. So this is a perfect example, perfect time as well to make a little video for you guys. So what I'm basically going to hopefully show you today is how you can tell whether or not your media's gone over the hill and really needs replacing. So that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. I think it's going to be quite interesting. I'm also going to be dividing the Ambrosia as well, and maybe orientating the Putidum, because it's starting to creep out over the side of the saucers now. So it's going to need a bit of space, but I don't want to provide too much space for it. I don't really want to cut it up. So what I'm going to try to do is try and sort of bend it around and fit it in the saucer a little bit better. As for the Ambrosia, it's sort of falling all over the place anyway. So we're going to be making some divisions on this, and I'm probably going to turn it into like one big mega specimen orchid. So yes, we'll be dividing it, but we're going to be making sure those everything goes back in the same pot, so we end up with a really dense cluster of this plant as well. There's also a little Drosera capensis, which is just seeded in there, which is growing, which just goes to show your orchid media is probably not full of salts, because if it was, the carnivorous plant wouldn't be able to live there. And there's various ferns, and need to get rid of some of this moss, because I get a lot of compliments about the moss. It's not hard to grow, it just turns up, it just grows in my greenhouse, so it covers everything. So that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to make a cup of tea, then I'll get you guys in a bit more of a suitable position, and I'll show you what I mean by bad media. Okay, so there's going to be a number of things you're going to need before we start talking about the media, because as I said, I'm going to divide some of these up. So a cup of tea most importantly. I'm going to be using some sterilised secateurs. These ones have got like a sort of a Gucci ratchet in them. They're quite good for cutting stuff in the garden, but I've just run them under the hob, or over the hob through the flame, get temperature up on that way, and there's no nasties on that. I've got a little pot here which has got some cinnamon in it. Smells like Christmas. Just for covering any of the wounds up, because that's a really, really good natural antifungal properties, or it's got really, really good natural antifungal properties, so we can use that to seal over the edges of the wounds. We only need to put a little dusting on there, and that's just going to help fight off any potential issues that may arise from us actually cutting the plants. I put loads of newspaper down on the table as well so that Kath doesn't go mad, so that my wife doesn't kill me. I've got the classic blue bowl, which I use for everything. It would be great for this because you can just tip everything out in it. And then any of the leftover or any of the old wood chip goes in the composter in the garden. I've got a wheelie bin that I basically cut some holes in. Use that as my compost. All my vegetable waste and any bits of stuff or material that arises from repotting goes in there as well. So that's a really, really good way of recycling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, first of all, I'm going to take the hangers off of this guy. Put that out of the way so you don't have to see it. So these little pot hangers are great because they fit on these clear saucers really, really well. And they hang it up. It's as simple as that. That's what they're good for. That's what I use them for. So straight away, we can already see that the top of the pot is covered in moss, which is starting to look a bit scabby in a few places now. Not sure whether that's dry or I'm not entirely sure why. It just looks rough, so it's time to get rid of that. I'm not going to keep any of it because actually it just grows back so fast anyway. It's not really a big issue for me, and actually I find it a really good indicator as to how well the what sort of condition the media is in. Because if the moss starts to look a bit manky, the likelihood is that the media is getting a bit manky. I'll have a little bit of a closer look at that. I'll hold it up to the camera and shine a light on it as well so you can sort of see. It's still green in a few places up near my thumb, but then it's getting a bit browner and a bit more sort of manky elsewhere. So sorry about the lighting. If I wasn't so unbelievably skint, I'd invest in some sort of clip-on light for the camera, so this would be a lot better for you guys to see this. It's just me knocking my phone over. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to hold on the present. I'm going to sort of get on with it a little bit. But so those things to look out for. So I've already discussed that the moss might start looking a little bit manky. If you can grow moss on yours, then well done. It's a good sign that you're keeping your orchids in a really awesome condition, because obviously they grow in moss in the wild, well a lot do. Whether epiphytically, that having a covering of moss on whatever it is, whether they're lithophytic, so growing on rocks, or whether they're true epiphytes stuck to branches, a lot of the times it's not just bare wood they stick to, they'll stick to areas where there's moss, because the bare face of a tree, you know, the wood of a tree or the bark doesn't retain a huge amount of moisture, so they'll look for places where there's moss and lichens growing, and that's where they tend to proliferate. So this will probably all come off in one big pad. So, and I'll let you in a little secret. So one of the other things, and the best way of that I find of testing the media to see how it is, and it's a real easy one that anyone can do with a bit of practice, it's just to smell it. So I can smell that, and it smells really earthy, like really rich earthy, almost like a peat. Remember, it's from the moss went up my nose, so it's my nose tickle. But it really smells really earthy, and that's a real clear indicator for me that it's time to think about getting this moss and this plant out of this saucer and changing the media, because it shouldn't smell like earth. If it's smelling like earth, it's going to be too far gone. So what I'm going to do is take the tag out, stick that to one side so I don't forget which orchid it is. Another good thing about these saucers is if I turn it upside down, it should just literally go plop in one great big lump, maybe with a little bit of encouragement. It's coming. There it comes. Yeah, this is really manky. Whoop. You can see where lichen has started, or algae started to grow on the bottom of it here, where it's where obviously because these are clear. I mean, that will need we'll give that a good cleaning in a bit. But they're clear, so it allows light to get through to the bottom. So you'll also find algae and stuff will grow at the bottom of the pot near to where the light is. So you've got to bear that in mind. And it smells, it smells horrendous. So we'll pop that in there for the minute up that way. And what I might do is pick you guys up, and I'll tell you what I'll actually do. I'll take some pictures with my phone of what this looks like, and I'll put them in the video about now. And hopefully that was helpful. You'll be able to see what I'm talking about. And what I'll also do in a minute is, well, once I've got some of this off, I'll clear it all out, take the plant out of it, and then we'll go for some close-ups, and I'll show you what I mean, the sort of things you're looking for in bad, or when their media has gone sour and manky, basically. So I'll take some photos, turn you guys off, and tune back in a minute, and we'll have a close-up look and a bit of a discussion about the state of the media. Okay, so I've got the orchid over here in the sink. I thought I'd take this opportunity to just have a look at it, see how it's going. So this is the plant. I've just given it a good cleaning off outside, a bit of a spray down with the hose just to get the last of the old media off of it. And yeah, it's got a nice healthy root system on it. There's quite a few new growths. There's one up this end. There's another quite well established one by my finger just down this end. There's a few more as well. So it's a nice healthy looking orchid. I've just used some sort of like mildly warm water and this sponge actually here. So whilst it was in here, just give it a quick cleaning over. There's very little detergent. I rinsed it out beforehand just to shine the leaves up, get rid of any manky bits and pull any sheaves off of the bulbs, because this is a great opportunity to get rid of any old sheaves. There's a flower spike starting on that bulb there. So yeah, that's that bit done. We should go over now and have a look at what I'm talking about when I say old manky media. Okay, so this is very stereotypical old manky media. Look at this, you can see it was a perlite mixed with small grade orchid bark, and that's some of the moss on there, which is in varying degrees of mankiness. And it smells really earthy. You can see it's really broken down. All the orchid bark's gone really black. It loses its consistency as well. It loses its it becomes really crumbly and sort of weak. If you push your nail into it, it falls apart very easily. It's very soft and it's retaining a lot of. If I squidge it, you might be able to see the water coming or the moisture coming out between my fingers there. I mean, it's porous anyway, but bark in good condition should sort of resist the pressure between your finger and thumb. And that's just gonna all make it. That'll be all full of salts, and it's just degrading basically. It's part of the natural decay cycle, but it won't take long before the orchids are like, hang on a minute, I'm epiphytic. I don't sit in compost. I'm unhappy. There's no air around my roots, and there's salt build up, and they'll start sulking. So it's always best is a nice big pit. This will be a great example. So I can just squeeze that quite soft. You can see the moisture coming out through my fingers. And it also snaps and crumbles into nothing quite easily. So yeah, that is what I would term disgusting, manky, horrible media. Being in there too long, the plants will start suffering, and you've got to do something about it if you want your plants to remain happy. Another thing we're going to have to really pay attention to is these saucer bowls are really good. They're great for Bulbophyllums, but obviously being clear, the algae grows on them as well, especially when the media loses its porosity. So this is all glued on manky algae. If I touch it with my finger, you can see it's actually just coming off on my finger. It's pretty disgusting. So I'm going to take this outside, I'm going to wash it off with a hose, and then I'm going to use a dilute bleach solution to give it a good cleaning before I rinse it off with some pretty much boiling water, just to give it a clean up, and then we'll be ready to pop back into this. But at the moment, anybody in their own right mind wouldn't want to put an orchid back into that. It's unsightly and it's going to be full of mankiness. And by mankiness, I mean potential diseases, fungal growths and just general yuck. So I'll clean that and then we'll come back and pop the plant up. And hopefully by the time you've finished, this is what it should look like. So I've just washed that off, given it a nice bleaching with some warm water and a soft sponge, given it a good scrub, and it's good as new. Just make sure if you are going to do this, put some rubber gloves on, or you might want to put some eye protection on if you're going to be extra cautious, and make sure you just give it a really good rinsing off when you're finished.